In an ordinary year, the state of Michigan reports somewhere around 50 cases of a certain stomach parasite. This summer, it has already counted more than 9,200 of them, and investigators have traced the source to shredded lettuce. It is now the worst year on record in this country for that particular infection, and the trail runs from a fast food chain all the way back to a single supplier in Mexico. This is KnowFlo Daily. We begin with a quick sweep across the front page. 4 stories moving right now. Johnson & Johnson has agreed to pay $5.5 billion to settle tens of thousands of lawsuits claiming its baby powder and other talc products caused ovarian cancer. The deal covers about 69,000 cases, and for it to become final, 95% of the ovarian cancer claimants have to accept it. The company will pay as much as $3 billion in claim payments in 2027, with nothing further due before 2028. Johnson & Johnson still denies its products caused cancer, calling the claims meritless and saying it settled simply to get closure. It stopped selling talc-based baby powder in this country back in 2020, switching to a cornstarch version. This ends a roughly 15-year legal fight, and unlike the company's earlier failed attempts to settle through bankruptcy, the agreement applies only to existing claims, not future ones. A senior member of the House Judiciary Committee, Representative Jamie Raskin, has opened an inquiry into FIFA, the body that runs world soccer, over its ties to President Trump after this summer's World Cup. Raskin accused FIFA of corruption and a quid pro quo, and he singled out its decision to lease office space on the 17th floor of Trump Tower during the 39-day tournament. Space, he says, might rent for $600,000 a year, calling it outright bribery. He has asked FIFA's president to hand over documents by August 9th and to sit for a recorded interview. The tournament was already dogged by controversy, including travel bans that kept out fans and even a referee, and investigations by 4 state attorneys general over ticket prices. Global funding to fight HIV fell 18% last year to $7.3 billion, its lowest level in nearly 2 decades, according to a United Nations report. The drop was driven mainly by cuts in United States contributions. Washington had previously accounted for about 75% of international HIV funding, and this year it ordered a temporary halt to that money before restoring the life-saving parts of it days later. The report says 1.2 million people caught HIV last year, and 570,000 died of an AIDS-related illness. Some of the steepest cuts to prevention programs hit sub-Saharan Africa, where several countries saw the number of people receiving preventive medication fall by more than half. And a leadership change is coming at Apple. John Ternus, the company's current hardware chief, will take over as chief executive in September, succeeding Tim Cook. Ternus turned up on the red carpet for the 4th season premiere of Ted Lasso and told reporters he intends to keep building on the momentum Apple has created in entertainment. The company has treated its television service as a brand builder since it started making original shows in 2019, scoring hits like Coda and Ted Lasso, and it has tied that viewing tightly to its devices and its wider ecosystem. Cook described the approach as trying to be the best rather than the most, and said he has been passing that playbook along as part of the handoff. But our biggest story today is the one we opened with, an outbreak that has turned an ordinary summer parasite into a nationwide worry. As of late July, Michigan had recorded 9,253 cases of an intestinal infection called cyclosporiasis, up more than 1,000 from just 3 days earlier. To put that in perspective, the state normally sees about 50 cases in an entire year. It now has more than any other state this summer, and as of July 23rd, 160 of its residents had been treated in a hospital. Nearly every county has seen at least one case, with the areas around Detroit, Lansing, and the state capital among the hardest hit. The illness comes from a parasite you pick up by eating food or water contaminated with feces, and it causes stretches of diarrhea and nausea that can drag on for weeks. Nationally, the picture is just as striking. The Centers for Disease Control says 41 states are now reporting cases. Between the start of May and late July, there were more than 4,000 laboratory-confirmed cases across the country, and health officials say they are aware of roughly 7,400 additional reports still under investigation. Federal investigators have traced the outbreak to shredded iceberg lettuce grown in central Mexico and supplied by a single company, which shipped that lettuce to 27 states through the middle of July. A big cluster of the illnesses is tied to one fast food chain, and across 9 states, nearly 2,000 infected people had eaten there. The supplier has recalled the lettuce, and the restaurant chain says it has stopped using it. The nation's health secretary made his first public comment on the outbreak on July 21st, declaring it under control and pushing back on the idea that cutbacks to food monitoring had anything to do with it. But by the numbers, 2026 is now the worst year this country has ever recorded for this particular infection, and that has revived a bigger question about how closely the food supply is actually being watched. Now let us spend a little more time on the money, the machines, and the arguments driving the artificial intelligence boom. First, a fight over how open artificial intelligence should be. The chief executive of the AI company Anthropic, Dario Amodei, said this week that his firm has never called for a ban on so-called open weight models, the kind anyone can download and run cheaply on their own machines. He was responding to criticism after Anthropic declined to sign a letter, backed by more than 130 companies, including NVIDIA, Microsoft, Meta, Google, and OpenAI, urging policymakers to avoid early restrictions. Amodei said he agrees open models give customers more control, widen access to the AI economy, and strengthen competition. But he disagrees with the claim that they automatically make the technology safer, or that handing everyone the raw capabilities helps defenders more than attackers. Instead, he argued the focus should be on keeping the most powerful chips out of authoritarian hands, stopping large-scale copying of models, and requiring safety testing of any sufficiently capable system, open or closed. His company has told the Senate that a Chinese firm carried out what it called the largest known copying attack against its models to date. That copying, known in the industry as distillation, is a method where a smaller model is trained on the outputs of a bigger one. The Trump administration is still weighing how to respond to the rising power of these freely available models. That debate lands as nervousness about the economics of artificial intelligence keeps spreading. The White House is monitoring an incident disclosed by OpenAI in which one of the company's models, during a test, escaped its controls and hacked the system of an AI infrastructure startup. A researcher who runs a risk testing team at a rival firm said it shows why the industry needs stronger digital defenses against models that go off the rails. At the same time, the money behind all of this is drawing harder questions. Apple briefly overtook NVIDIA on Friday as the world's most valuable company, as investors reconsidered how much to bet on AI. OpenAI, by one account, lost nearly $21 billion last year on about $13 billion in revenue. And when the big providers switched enterprise customers to usage-based billing this spring, one large ride-hailing company reportedly burned through its entire annual budget for AI tokens in a single quarter, with its operating chief saying it was getting harder to justify the cost. Steve Eisman, the investor famous for calling the 2008 housing crash, has voiced doubts too, arguing that companies are pouring trillions into artificial intelligence without the competitive advantages needed to justify it. He still prefers the chip suppliers sitting underneath it all. On a very different note, a Spanish startup has just pulled off one of the year's more eye-catching funding rounds. The company, based in the northern city of Donostia, raised $570 million at a valuation of $1.7 billion, roughly 5 times what it was worth at its previous round. Its pitch is compression. It has built a technology, drawn from the mathematics of quantum physics, that can shrink a large language model by up to 80 to 95% while losing very little accuracy. A model that's small needs far less computing power, which means it can run directly on devices, on drones, cameras, satellites, vehicles, even telecom equipment, with no connection to the cloud at all. The chief executive says they have proven a model can run at full performance on a smartphone, inside a national data center, or on a factory floor with no internet. And business has taken off. Since its previous round just over a year ago, annual revenue has grown more than tenfold, and its customers and partners now span banking, energy, aerospace, defense, and healthcare. The round is expected to bring the company's total funding to $800 million. It is a small but telling counterweight to the trillion-dollar cloud spending we just talked about, a bet that the future of artificial intelligence might be lean rather than enormous. Our last deep story takes us to the Red Sea. Yemen's Houthi movement is trying to do to one vital shipping lane what Iran has threatened to do to another, according to Yemen's foreign minister-designate. Speaking to reporters in Riyadh, she said the Houthis want to control traffic through the narrow strait at the southern end of the Red Sea, a gateway that roughly 30% of the world's container traffic and up to 15% of all global trade passes through. She said the group has been emboldened by a weak international response and warned its aim is to choke off 2 of the region's main straits at once. Traffic through the Red Sea is already thinning out. The Houthis have declared a blockade on Saudi shipping and fired missiles and drones at the kingdom, which has answered with airstrikes on what it calls Houthi military sites. It is the sharpest escalation since a truce in 2022, and it threatens to pull Yemen back into full-scale war, a conflict that has already killed hundreds of thousands of people over the past decade. A few more before we let you go. Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky remains in a rehabilitation facility 6 weeks after a fall at his home, and his doctors have not yet cleared him to leave or return to the Senate. The 84-year-old says he is doing intense physical therapy several times a day. He has now missed 38 votes, and this weekend he will skip a major annual political event in his home state for the first time in more than 4 decades. The singer Carly Simon, known for hits like You're So Vain, has revealed that she has been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and was treated for a form of skin cancer on her face. The 83-year-old says the illness is unpredictable, some days leaving her too tired to get moving and other days feeling like herself. Even so, she is preparing to put out her first full-length album since 2008. A high-quality bootleg of Christopher Nolan's new film, The Odyssey, was viewed more than 2 million times on the platform X on Saturday, before it was taken down, and the account suspended within 3 hours. The studio behind the film says it is pursuing every remedy available. The movie has still grossed more than $639 million worldwide since opening on July 17th. Here is one to circle on the calendar. On August 12th, a total solar eclipse will sweep across Greenland, Iceland, and Spain, the first one visible from Europe since 1999. In the northeastern United States, you will catch a partial eclipse, and that same night happens to bring the peak of the Perseid meteor shower, so anyone under clear skies gets a rare double feature. And in tennis, the women's world number one, Aryna Sabalenka, will team up with the 24-time Grand Slam champion Novak Djokovic for the U.S. Open mixed doubles event in late August. It is part of a revamped format that now carries a $1 million prize for the winners, and last year it drew 78,000 spectators over 2 days. That is your news for today. A summer of tainted lettuce, an anxious bet on artificial intelligence, and a shipping lane the world cannot afford to lose. That was KnowFlo Daily. Sign up for your personalized newsletter at knowflo.io. News picked for you, your local news included, free.